Have you ever noticed that the person who leaves early is often the one who sees the most? The one who skips the party, avoids the small talk, doesn't care about the newest trend. They would rather spend a Friday night alone with a book, lost in thought, or absorbed in a project no one else quite understands. And when you ask them why they don't go out more, they simply shrug. I don't see the point. At first, it's easy to label them antisocial, arrogant, strange. But what if their distance isn't dysfunction, but perception? What if they're not disconnected from life, but aware of something most people overlook? There's a deeper pattern here, and it's not new. In fact, it was described in the 19th century by the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer argued that highly intelligent people often withdraw from society, not because they despise others, but because they find most interactions painfully superficial. While many chase validation, gossip, and approval, the reflective mind seeks something else entirely: depth, the life of the mind. And once someone has tasted that depth, surface-level exchanges begin to feel empty, almost unbearable. But before we go deeper into Schopenhauer's philosophy, imagine this. Two people at a party. The first moves through the room effortlessly, laughing, charming, magnetic. They glide from group to group, commanding attention without trying. The second sits quietly in the corner, holding a drink, observing. Their expression carries mild indifference. Most people would immediately assume the first person is happier, more successful, more alive. But here's the twist. Schopenhauer would argue the opposite. The one in the corner isn't isolated. They're liberated, free from performing for approval, free from the exhausting need to impress, free from constant comparison, free to think. And that is the heart of his claim. The more intelligent you become, the less you depend on society. Not because you lack emotion, not because you're cold, but because you've discovered a richer internal world. And once you discover that, external noise loses its appeal. But here's the uncomfortable question. Why does intelligence make ordinary social life feel draining? And more importantly, is there a hidden cost to stepping away? We'll come back to that. First, consider how most interactions actually function. Schopenhauer believed that many social gatherings are fueled by boredom and subtle neediness. People don't always connect because they have something meaningful to exchange. Often, they gather because silence feels threatening, because being alone with one's own thoughts can be unbearable. So they talk about nothing. They recycle opinions, revisit trivial dramas, repeat the same surface-level themes, not because it matters, but because the silence must be filled. Now imagine having a mind that constantly searches for depth, for patterns, for nuance, for complexity, listening to the same shallow loop over and over again, like a broken record. For a sharp mind, that isn't entertainment, it's torture. And this is where it becomes dangerous, because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. But that raises something even more interesting. If intelligent people withdraw because they see too clearly, what happens to their relationships? And does freedom from the crowd come at the price of connection? That's where this philosophy becomes complicated. Sooner or later, you stop trying to endure it. You don't argue, you don't explain. You simply walk away. And it's not only boredom, it's a clash of values. Most people seek validation, status, belonging. They want to be liked, accepted, recognized. But to a deeply intellectual mind, these pursuits feel strangely empty. Why invest energy in impressing strangers when you could be reading, building, exploring, questioning? Why chase applause when you could chase understanding? Schopenhauer expressed it with brutal clarity. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. In other words, authenticity fades the moment performance begins. Now you might object. Isn't connection essential for happiness? Isn't socializing part of being human? Schopenhauer's answer was unsettling. Not necessarily. He believed happiness is rooted in self-sufficiency, in intellectual curiosity, in the ability to enjoy your own mind without needing an audience. The more dependent you become on others for stimulation or approval, the weaker your inner world grows. Let that sink in. If silence makes you uncomfortable, what is it revealing? If you cannot sit alone without reaching for distraction, what are you avoiding? This is where the argument sharpens, because it suggests something uncomfortable. Perhaps the constant need for noise is not connection, but escape. But here's the nuance most people miss. Schopenhauer was not preaching total isolation. He wasn't telling you to disappear into a cave. Even he acknowledged that some social contact is necessary, but it must be meaningful. One profound conversation with someone who challenges your thinking is worth more than 100 forgettable gatherings. The issue isn't humanity, it's mediocrity. Most social environments are engineered for the lowest common denominator. Safe topics, predictable humor, surface-level exchange. If you crave depth, you will inevitably feel out of sync. And that dissonance creates distance. So what was his solution? Simple, but difficult. Seek solitude, without vanishing from the world. Build such a rich inner life that loneliness rarely touches you. Read, write, create, think. Choose a small circle of exceptional minds who stimulate you, and let the rest fade into background noise. Because eventually, the sharper your mind becomes, the clearer it is that much of social life is distraction disguised as importance. But now we arrive at the real tension. Is this wisdom or subtle arrogance? Is withdrawal a sign of intelligence or a defense mechanism dressed up as philosophy? After all, we are social creatures. Even Schopenhauer admitted that absolute isolation can lead to psychological unraveling. So perhaps the answer is not rejection. Perhaps it's calibration. The truly wise person doesn't abandon society. They engage selectively. They participate when there is substance. They retreat when there is not. They never apologize for valuing depth over noise. And they never confuse solitude with loneliness. So the next time you notice someone sitting quietly at the edge of the room, don't assume they're disconnected. Don't assume they're unhappy. They may simply be observing, thinking, choosing, and possibly seeing more than anyone else there.